So today we're going to talk about a very important subject, which I think was started this morning. Selfishness versus self-centeredness. So it's an important concept. It's actually not a hard concept. It's not long. Hopefully not go very long. So in recovery circles, there's a lot of talk around you have to be selfish with your recovery, and this is true. In that, recovery first. If your recovery is not first, you start putting other people, other things, jobs more important than you. जिससे किसी कोई और चीज आपके पार्ट तो पहला से रखोगे नुकसान ही है. You will fall, you will break, and then you will no longer be able to serve. So recovery is first. It's before your kids. It's before your spouse. It's before anything else. In early recovery, that usually means a lot of time. So early recovery, it takes a lot of time. Hours. But when your recovery comes first, you will have something to offer everyone else. So I want to talk a little bit about why is that? Because that does seem selfish, right? And everybody is taught selfishness is bad. And actually, selfishness is, I would argue, probably not the right word for what recovery first is. When you adopt a view that recovery comes first, what is recovery? Recovery is connect to self, connect to others, commit to daily practice, right? That's what recovery first means. And when you do that, you start to spend time with yourself and you build a relationship with yourself. Ultimately, the reason why people become very self-centered is because they don't know themselves. It's like that thing with bullies. Everybody knows that if you stand up to a bully, they pop. They run away. What's a bully in Punjabi? What do you call Punjabi bully? ਜਿਹੜਾ ਧੱਕਾ ਮਾਰਦਾ. Anyways, like a bully, I remember in my grade 9 class, I got bullied from like, I don't know, grade 5 to 9 pretty horribly. But in grade 9, I mean, I'm not espousing this, but like, just like any grade 9er at something, so like they were like, cornered me in the washroom and like there was like 5 of them, guys, and they were like touching my turban or my hair and like saying bad things. And then at some point I just said, I kind of like snapped. So I took the ringleader and I took him down. and the other guys, there's like 5 of them, right? And I'm like a scrawny kid. They just stood there. They're like, and I had the guy down in a headlock, and I'm just like, and he's like, guys, help me. And they're like, just like, and then I let him go. He gets up. They never come near me ever again. Why? Because what bullies do is they're inside So if I draw a person, kind of, that's not very good.
Stickman.
Let's do stickman, yeah. So the if you have a person and they really hate themselves, they're hollow. Whenever someone is hollow, what they do is they feel bad, they feel like victims, and the only way they can work it out is they project strength, so that nobody ever discovers how pitiful they are. No one discovers how weak they really are. No one figures out that they have vulnerabilities. Usually, people have learned, I'm not weak. That's why people don't ask for help. Asking for help is weakness. I'm not weak, so I'm not going to ask for help. I'm going to actually become a helper. Because surely nobody will ever think that I need help. Because I'm a helper. And if I'm a helper, I must be strong. Or, if I'm a bully, I got big muscles, I can punch holes in walls and people are afraid of me, until that one scrawny kid stands up to you and says, no, I'm going to just give you a shove. But when your psychology is built that way, it's built on a vacuum. So when somebody takes this balloon and pops it, do balloons do they pop suddenly? Or do they pop? That's why they pop. You can hear a sound because high pressure, decompression, and that's what happened. That's why nobody ever bothered me again. Not just grade 9, grade 10, they wouldn't talk about me in the bus. They could have, but it popped the bubble. You see, I became the person that knew. And that was very scary, so they just stayed the heck away from me. That's the psychology of a bully. That's the psychology that's created by developmental trauma. Whether it's bullying behavior, whether it's helping behavior, whether it's whatever behavior, in all of it is always self-centeredness. The helper help the other. Somehow, most people who want to help others, inside, deep down, there's a secret hope that by helping others, maybe you'll get helped. It doesn't come true, but there's that hope, right? It's a self-centered motive. Bullying others, project power to feel powerful. Self-centered motive. Defining oneself in terms of other people, what they think, what they feel, self-centered motive. And in addiction, what we know is addiction is a disease of extreme, not just little, extreme self-centeredness. Addiction is a disease of extreme self-centeredness, and it's projecting some kind of behavior, some kind of way of enforcing control to keep this barrier nice and strong. And so when you have this barrier, it's just important to understand it's built in an unstable way. There's a vacuum in it. It's not stable. It will explode or implode because it's not in harmony. So self-centeredness is like a bubble. And so you'll find, we talk a lot about the opposites rule. Anyone know the opposite rule? Opposite rule? Opposite rule is simply this. In early recovery especially, if you don't feel like doing something, then that's exactly what you should do. That's the opposite rule. ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੁਝ ਕਰਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੰਗਦੇ, early recovery ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ. You feel like sleeping, you should get up. You feel like getting up, you should sleep. You feel like yelling, you should stay quiet. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗਲਤ ਬੋਲਣਾ, ਉੱਚੀ ਬੋਲਣਾ, ਔਰ ਗੁੱਸਾ ਕੱਢਣਾ, ਚੁੱਪ ਰਹੋ. If you feel angry but you feel like you should be quiet, maybe you should say something. In early recovery, which is like the first 6 months of an honest recovery effort, 12 months, opposite. You don't feel like eating the food that everyone's cooking, you should eat that food. The opposite rule helps a lot of people who are really confused because they're operating from an extremely self-centered point of view. So anything they do that's opposite will be better than what they want to do. And then over 12 months, you can change that. So what do we do to heal this? So you have a vacuum. Vacuum is the emptiness. Anyone feel empty sometimes? Empty? Like andar kuch nahi hega? Khali? Feel that? इनमें ताड़े कोई meaning नहीं हैगा, कोई फ़ायदा नहीं हैगा, खाली, empty. Have you ever felt empty? If you're honest with yourself, you will have at some point, because unless you were raised in a saintly manner, and even if you were, it seems not to be related to that, you haven't, unless you work on it. So when you have hollowness, the only way to fill it is the old-fashioned way. Is to put a little pipe in, maybe a tiny pipe. Because actually balloons, you can, if you put something so thin, a really thin needle, it won't pop it. Really thin. You can use that to measure pressure. If it's really, really thin. If it's big, it'll pop it. But if it's so tiny, you can thread it in there. We do this a lot in medical procedures, like a pregnant woman with a pregnancy in the belly. You put a little needle in. It's called amniocentesis, and it doesn't pop anything. It just collects the fluid. If you put a big needle in, it'll create a problem. So just a tiny needle, you can do things. So you start pumping in recovery. With recovery, you start to fill up. So we were talking this morning about inner child work. This emptiness is full of tiny neglected children. Memories of tiny neglected children from before conception to today. Your body and mind and your system has forgotten nothing. The vacuum is full of perpetration, of victimization, of failed rescuer. Behaviors, people, places, things, situations, circumstances. And so when you start putting in a daily effort, it starts to fill up with good stuff. The vacuum starts to fill up, and then you don't need this barrier as much. You can let it loose. The therapist can ask for help and maybe get a therapist. I say this a lot. Every good therapist should have a therapist or some system. And if they're like, that's none of your business, how come you're asking me? That's mine. Get a new therapist. Any good therapist should be very happy to tell you what they do to look after themselves. And if they tell you that they're beyond that, my opinion on that is clear. Every person they may not need a therapist per se, but they need a practice. Because nobody stays good without a practice. At least I haven't met them. I'd love to meet someone who feels good without a practice, but I've not met them. I've met people who look like they don't have a practice, but they do. They just won't tell you. Anyway, so connecting to self, connecting to others, committing to daily practice fills in the vacuum. This takes time. It takes time to do this. That's one of the earliest fights a person in recovery has with their family. Usually like the first couple of weeks, months, years, family are like, why do you have to go to all those meetings? Why do you have to be all these places? So see, ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ time spend ਕਰੋ, ਸੀ ਇੱਧਰ ਬਾਹਰ ਕਿਉਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, recovery ਕਿਉਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, right? ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਆ ਪਾਠ ਕਿਉਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, you know? Why do you do so many prayers? Why do you have to do all these things? You know, why can't you just relax? Because if you relax, this problem comes back quickly, and then you fall apart, and then they lose everything that they've seen gains in the family. So they don't like the end result, but in early recovery, they don't like the fact that this takes time, because it takes time. And you must, if you have a problem, you have to put in the time. And that can appear selfish. But it's not. Selfish is the maintenance of the vacuum. That's selfish. The intentional maintenance of a system that projects self-centeredness is selfish. I'll say that again. The intentional maintenance of a system that is designed to project self-centeredness, that is selfish. So for a person in recovery, not meditating is selfish. For a person in recovery, not going to some teacher and learning is selfish. Not having a daily practice is selfish because it perpetrates, the system perpetrates. It attacks people. The bully can't help but bully someone else. You ever have a boss who bullies you? Has anyone ever had a boss who bullies them? No one had a boss that was mean? Come on. Come on. Everyone's had a boss who's mean, right? But that's what it is, right? A boss. In medical school, I had a resident at a person who was above a couple of years ahead. It wasn't like my surgery rotation. And this resident, he would just feel good by asking students hard questions and making fun of them when they don't have the answer. That's what he would do. He would read up on the question to ask, and then he'd ask it just a few minutes later. So he didn't know the answer because he was clearly reading it, but just to sort of make himself, give him knowledge. He's like, hey, where's the appendix located? I don't know. And then when you couldn't give him the answer he was looking for, he's like, see, it's looking here, and you should know this. We call that pimping, right? It's called pimping, yeah. It's called being pimped in medical terminology. That's a medical urban dictionary, right? But that's what it was. That's a selfish. What's selfish is the neglect of the daily practice that treats a self-centering condition. The opposite of this is to realize your true identity. Inside of you is sacredness. Inside of you is divinity. Inside of you is light. And what do we do with sacredness? We take care of it, right? We put a nice altar, whatever your value of sacredness is. We put flowers there if we can afford them. We put scents. Every person in recovery should have a sacred place in their house. ਸੋ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਲਾਈਕ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰਿਕਵਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਥਾਂ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਸਟ ਸਮਥਿੰਗ ਨਾਈਸ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੈਠ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਸ਼ਾਂਤੀ, where you can sit and meditate and be pure, a little bit closer to that. When you do self-therapy, you're cultivating that inside you. You are celebrating what we call the mind and body temple that houses the light. That is you, your true identity. So it's actually quite the opposite of being selfish when you honor something like that. You serve that. And I remember one lady, she said to me, Dr. Gill, I don't have anything like that inside me. And I was like, oh. I was like, that's okay. I can believe it until you can believe it for yourself, because it's true. We all have sacredness. Is looking after the sacredness that is you, connecting with, is that selfish? It's no more selfish than taking care of a nice garden. It's no more selfish than looking after the needs of your kids. When you're tending to something that's beautiful, and you fill it with beauty, and you honor it as beauty, that's not selfish. When you view that as that, the time that you take to build a new self-concept that is in line with your true identity, whatever that is, you will no longer need to project anything. You will come to the realization that you're okay as you are. I am good as I am. You can see why the negative thoughts will stop. They have to stop. If you're pure inside, and you have innocent children inside that you're tending to, of your being, protecting, then there's no need for negative self-talk. Usually negative self-talk comes from some part of you that's feeling neglected by you. That's usually how it happens. Try talking to your negative self-talk. You can. That's how you do it. You just, you're like, you say to yourself, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. And then you're just like, how can I serve you? Part of me that thinks I'm bad. See what comes up. See what answer comes up. See what weird thing comes up. I guarantee you something will come up. Unless you did like some drugs or something and you're really psychotic. But more often than not, something will come up because it's a dissociated voice. Like one part of you is separated, and there's a barrier, and they're separated. They're going to be projecting. Just like how this can happen. Yeah, this is kind of cool. How this can happen outside of you, this can also happen inside of you. Same thing, the bully. Except it's in your head. It's called dissociation. It's very common. So, that's kind of the thing about being selfish with your recovery. It's not the right word. It's not the word I would use. It's a low vibrational frequency term. But the essence of it is accurate. It's important that recovery comes first. It's important that you take patience with your families and your friends who don't understand. You have to be patient with them, because they won't understand why you have to put these absurd amounts of time. Not just patience, it's like anybody. When Prabjit, my wife, got married, she didn't understand why I put so much time into these activities. And we had to, over years, build that understanding. to the point where she now prioritizes. Like, you need to go do your prayers. You need to go do this. You need to go do that. But it took time. Time ਲੱਗਦਾ family ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਦਾ ਕਿਉਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਕਰਨੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ. It takes time. And so it's not selfish though. How you've been living life for 30 years is more likely selfish. Putting recovery first is natural. It's a harmonious way of being. The yogi, you would say 10% of your time, 10%. This is not just the yogi, every religion says this, 10%, 10%. 10% of not just of your money, of your time. A good thing to live by is put 10% of your time towards, in a day, towards self-therapy. Connect to self, connect to others, commit to daily practice. And then the 90% of your day will go really well. So, it's 2.5 hours, 2.4, if you want to be exact. It's a nice ideal. You don't have to get there. But this is why people in early recovery, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they're always out helping people. It's because when you put in your 10%, you get the 90% stability. And you just have to do that every day. And this vacuum will fill. You'll become lovable. You'll become stable. And it won't take that long. So that's my comment on selfishness versus self-centeredness. It's not selfish to put yourself first, and today this is the reason. So, any questions, comments? कोई question है क्या? मैं पंजाबी में बोलूँगा. Any questions about this?
What word would you choose if not selfishness? You said you didn't like that word.
Oh, yeah, a higher vibrational frequency would be prioritizing yourself therapy. Any word, every word has a vibrational frequency. If you analyze your thought content and what you look at, there's words that have low vibrational energy, like hate, and then there's rage, and then there's words that have little easier, like irritate, right? And then there's like love. So if we're talking about self-love, would you say selfish achieves the right vibrational intonation? It doesn't, does it? But it does work in terms of conveying a point. But just remember that it's important that we... so self-love, that hits it better. Self-care, you can see self-love and self-care. Can you see the vibrational difference? Self-love, self-care. There's a difference, isn't there? Self-care in the world of healing, in the world of psychology, has become like just kind of an extra, yeah, how's your self-care? Doesn't quite hit what's happening, does it? Because it's a little bit more than care. We need a revolution down here, it's so something therapeutic's got to happen down there. So self-care is not going to do it. So you'll have to find your own word. But when in yoga we call it a sadhana, a daily practice. Prioritize. Important. Treat your self-care, your self-therapy, as like the food you eat. Is it selfish to eat food? Do we describe eating in a way of selfishness? We don't, really. But no one would deny the importance of it. So just elevate this thing that you do, however much of it you do, to that level of sacredness. And when you eat, please eat sacredly. Eat with prayer. Eat with enjoyment. The universe is offering you a gift to sustain you. Take it in reverence. You'll get more nutrition out of it, but also it'll elevate that relationship with that food. And then you won't want to take too much, or you won't want to take too little. You'll be able to hit that. It's a separate topic. Does that answer the question? It's a bit of I've recorded lots of videos on the importance of sensory information. And most stuff out there that we read is low vibration. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Right? Just turn on your television. Bacardi, is that what it's called? Bacardi, the alcohol. Bacardi, suits and cigarettes and like a lot of low vibration kind of lots of war going on these days. So in early recovery especially, you have to understand, and generally, be careful what you take in your body and in your mind. What's been taken cannot be untaken. It must be processed. And if you have a vacuum issue, don't add to it. It's bad enough as it is. Don't make it worse. But most people, they're making it worse all the time through what they consume. Another tangent. Other questions or comments? A word that does do it is devotion. Being devoted to yourself. That's a word that will capture that vibration a little bit more. A lot of these words are going to be foreign to you. If you've never been devoted to anything in life, not to a church, not to like something sacred, the idea of devotion, it's like surrender. Like, who surrenders? Who devotes? Like, these are weird words, especially in the world of healing and therapy. And yet these are the words that capture the vibration. So sacredness, devotion, surrender, love. These are all words that capture that sanctity of what is going to actually fill that vacuum very rapidly. Accessing it is the stuff that you learn when you engage in this process. Okay, good. I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you, everyone. Well, if I misspoke, my sincerest apologies. Bye, Drew.